And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm a big fan of Power Grid, which is a 2 to 6 player game about providing power to Germany and the United States. Doesn't sound that exciting, but it really is quite an excellent game, to the point where I have it and several expansions here on my shelf. But then they came out with Power Grid Deluxe, the Europe and North America version. Now, if you've never played Power Grid before, this is a good way to jump on board because this is a complete game. They change several things about it, and of course it comes with that word Deluxe in it. Let's take a look at how the game plays, and then we'll be back. I'm not going to go over setup because it's different for the number of players and which side of the map. I'm showing you the North American side. There's also a European side. Now, when you play the game, depending on how many players, you're going to use a certain number of areas. So let's say we're playing a 4-player game, so we're going to use 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll use these 4 areas that are connected, or maybe these 4 areas, or these 4. You'll notice there's different areas that you will use so you can have different games each time. These areas are made up of different cities. To win the game, depending on how many players, of course, when you someone builds a certain number of power plants. These are power plants. They're like little globular things that we place in cities. When someone has built a certain number, let's say 17, at that point, after that round ends, whoever can power the most power stations is the winner. So it doesn't really matter how many you've built. It matters how many you can power. And that's going to be done by getting power plants. You can have 3 power plants in front of you. So let's say I have this one. This one here uses 1 coal to power 2 different power plants, which is good maybe in the beginning of the game. But as the game progresses, you're going to want something like this one that uses 2 of gas to power 6 different cities. And this one uses 3 oil to power 6 cities. This one just powers 4 cities all by itself. 3 coal to power 6 cities. And so the 4 main resources are in this game are coal, wind, oil, and uranium. And so the beginning of each round of the game is going to take place the same way. And I should mention that this game has multiple steps. There's 3 steps in the game. Each step has kind of a different facet on the game. I'll explain those later. But each round is part of a step. And the first thing you do is you do basically an auction. Players are going to auction off different power plants. Now, you can only win 1 power plant per turn, and you don't have to, but you can. And the number on the top is the starting bid. And you just go around the table till someone wins it. When you bid, you're going to be using electro, which is these little plastic coins here. Players will start with a certain amount of electro. And at the end of each round, players are going to be able to get money based on how many plants they power that turn. So you can see even if you power no plants, you'll still make 10 electro, while if you're powering 20 cities, you will make 150. There's diminishing returns as you make more as time goes by. So players are going to be bidding on these, and as they bid on them, they'll take it off. Another power plant will be drawn, and these numbers are adjusted accordingly. You can only bid off the ones in the top row, but you can see what's coming up. And the higher the number is, the better the power plant is as they come up. Now, after players have each won a power plant or decided to pass, at that point they're going to be building on the board. And now this is a very critical thing about this game, is turn order. Over here is a power plant for each player used to keep track of turn order. And turn order is important because whoever's highest turn order gets to go first in the auction phase. But other than that, they're going to be going last. They go last in the city building phase, and they go last in the resource buying phase. So as you build cities, the first time you build in a city, let's say I start here in Columbus, I have to pay 10 electro to build in Columbus. You can see there's 3 spots to build, but in step 1 of the game, like I told you, the game is in 3 steps. You can only build into 10 areas. If I then want to go up to Detroit, I would have to pay 17. 7 for the connection fee, and then another 10. And then if I wanted to continue on to Toronto later on, I could pay 18 to go there. Let's say, for example, I wanted to go to Montreal. So then, of course, I need to go through Ottawa. But unfortunately, green is already there. Well, I could simply pay 8 plus 3, 11, plus a 10, 21 to build and jump to Montreal. And sometimes there's no connection fee. Like if Blue built his first city here in New York for 10, he could build a second one here for another 10 because they're connected to each other. And then he could pay 13 more to go down to Philadelphia. So this is a good area to start in. After players are done building their cities, again, it's done in reverse turn order. In reverse turn order, you'll buy resources. Down here at the bottom are resources that are here: the coal, the gas, the oil, and the uranium. And at the end of each round, you're going to add a certain number to the tracks depending on which board you're using and how many numbers. So this is a 4-player game in America, and then what step it is. So in step 1, we add 3 coal, but in step 2, we'd add 6 coal, and then back down to 3 in step 3. And so these are going to wane and wax over here, but what's important is when you're buying them, the number down here is the cost that you're paying. So if I get to buy first, and I'm buying oil, for example, I might buy 4 oil. That costs me here 8 plus 10, 18. While the next person, if they want to buy 2 oil, that's going to cost them 12. And if they buy 4 oil like I did, that's going to cost them 26. Now, when you buy resources, you have to look at the power plants you own. So let's say I own this one here. I can buy up to double the number of resources on it. So this one can hold 4 coal. I can't put more than that on it. And some power plants like this one here can use different types of resources. This one can use gas or oil. After everyone is done buying the resources, they can then use their power plants, power them up, get money for them, and we go on to the next phase. Depending on when things happen, like step 2 can happen on a couple things, but usually when someone builds a certain number of cities on the board, step 2 happens, which will change a little bit about how things are auctioned and also allows people now to build into 15 spots in cities. And then when step 3 happens, which usually means you've gone through the whole deck of power plants, there's a card in the deck, then you can build on the 20s, and also the market might change. Like for example, on the North American board, these 2 go away, and now you can buy any of the 6. As I said, there's 2 sides to the board. The other side is the European map, which gives you different things, different places to build, and a few different rules. You'll see that there's a different kind of structure here for the power plants. But the gameplay plays essentially the same. As I said, when someone builds a certain number of power plants on the board, whoever can then power the most is the winner of the game. If there's a tie, and there often is a tie, whoever has the most money wins the tie breaker. Okay, well, several things to talk about here. First of all, let's get the game out of the way. The gameplay of Power Grid, if you've never played before, is phenomenal. It is an absolutely amazing game in which there's auctions. I'm not a big fan of auctions, but in this one there's very intriguing as you sit there and you try to figure out which power plant works best for you. And then there's this very intriguing manipulation of turn order in this game, because the turn order is determined by whoever has the most cities. So you want to expand quickly, because if you expand quickly, you can get the cheaper prices. The problem is if you go first, that means you're buying new cities last and you're buying the resources last, which is going to cost you money. Not only mentioning that, but as you produce power for more cities, you get more money, but it's kind of like a shrinking profits as time goes by. So this game really balances well. Although if you fall too far behind, it is difficult to catch up. You have to try and figure out, if someone else is in the coal market, maybe I should get into the gas market, or maybe I should go for the power plants that don't even need resources. They're obviously the best, but of course, you're probably going to pay a hefty amount for them during auction time. Both sides of the board work well. The United States side is better for people who are new to the genre, but the other one's interesting too. So, now let's mention this game. Oh, and I guess I should mention also, if you've never played this before, it plays equally as well with all the number of players, I think. However, 6 players does take a much longer time. I found that I've enjoyed the game best with 4 or 5. Even that can be a good hour and a half, 2 hour, 2.5 hour if you really get intense about a game. But I think the game is worth it. Now, what's the differences between this and the original Power Grid? Well, they got rid of trash, which was a resource in the original one, and they added gas. Big deal, okay? That doesn't really change it at all. This I look at as kind of an expansion map for the game. There's some new minor rule changes, especially in how power plants come out, and I actually think those are better and help streamline it and add a little bit of unpredictability. And the power deck of different power plants is different than the original game, but again, I wouldn't know enough to see if that matters. This feels like an expansion. or a redone version. But it says Deluxe on the box. So let's talk about that. It comes with these little plastic chips to replace the money. They're really not that good. You can barely read the numbers on them, so you have to go by colors as to how they're different. And in Power Grid, it's really handy if money is secret. And how do you keep a pile of coins secret? And the original one had paper money, which wasn't very good either, but at least you could keep that underneath a card or something. And I replaced mine with Power Grid cards. Card money would have been much better in this game, especially since it's being manipulated around so much. They switched out the houses for these little weird nebulous Power Grid things, which is okay, I guess. And the resources are nice in this one, but they weren't terrible in the original one either. The board itself is a brighter, cheerful look. Although the cities are hard to see, the 10, 15, and 20. I thought it was harder to see and not as convenient as the original cities were, although some of the numbers on this board is clear. If there's one thing this board did that is awesome, that this game version did that's awesome, it's those cards that tell you how many resources to add each turn based on the number of players and what side of the board. That's great. It was originally in a book, but this is much easier. You put this right next to the resources, you can glance at it and see how it works. And this game provided a few other components, but this is not deluxe by any means. This is more of a lateral move. This isn't even a slightly deluxe. This is just a revised version is what they should have called it. So if you own Power Grid, do you need to get this? I don't think so, unless you were in the mood for more maps with different resources. If you were in the mood for, if you were looking for a Power Grid Deluxe, this is not it. And I almost think it's a disservice to put that in the front of the box because it really isn't that much better. It has like a cosmetic change, but it's not deluxe in any regard. So if I want to play these maps, I would have to get the new components. I guess I'm not really seeing why they changed the gas and the trash. Yes, gas power makes sense, but does it really matter in the long run? Why couldn't they have just made the map and used the trash? They're trying to reboot the process, I guess. So if you've never played Power Grid before, check it out. This is a great game. All those things I said about components are fine. I'm just saying that in the context of Deluxe. This is a great game to jump into, very deep and heavy, and a very fantastic experience. But if you already own Power Grid, you don't need this unless you're bored with the maps you have. And I have several maps for my Power Grid, so this is not something I need it to have. The cleaner look, the different look might appeal to some people, and the slightly changed rules, which I could probably incorporate in the original game anyway. Some of them are nice, but it's cool, just not deluxe. Dice Tower Judgment, excellent.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Leave it open.